I had been looking forward to the year-end party. After finishing work that day, I headed to the venue in high spirits. Most of the seats were already taken, so I had no trouble finding my spot. My seat was near the CEO, Williams. After the toast, the food and beer kept coming, and more people started getting drunk. Williams, too, was in high spirits, drinking beer with the employees around him, his face turning red. It would have been great if the evening had just continued like that. But then Williams, with a cheerful expression, made a condescending remark to me. "Hey, high school dropout, if you can solve this, I'll give you $1 million. Well, you probably can't, but I'll let you dream. Even if I get it right, the money won't come to me, will it?" When I said that, Williams replied, "Oh, I almost forgot," and pulled out a paper from his bag. It was a grant contract, and it seemed Williams had prepared this exchange as one of the party's events. Both Williams and I signed the paper while everyone watched. "This makes the contract official. Maybe you can buy some real estate with it," Williams said, laughing as he looked back down at his notebook to find the page with the problem. Finally, he found the page he was looking for and, saying, "Here we go," began to recite a complex phrase that made the other employees widen their eyes. I then received the open notebook with a blank page to write the answer, while the employees watched. "My name is Wilson Steve. I'm in my 50s and work for a local construction company. This physically demanding job is not easy. However, at the end of the day, I'm wrapped in a pleasant fatigue, and it's satisfying to see the building's progress towards completion day by day. What I like most about this job is that academic background doesn't matter. Actually, I graduated at the top of my class from Harvard University. When I was a new graduate, I had no trouble finding a job and joined a large company. But the hard part came after that. The Harvard University top graduate title always followed me. And if anything happened, people would say, 'You're from Harvard University. You should handle this easily.' Or, 'If you're the top graduate, you should understand without being told.' Despite this, I was blamed severely if I made mistakes or didn't produce results, with comments like, 'Why can't you do this?' and 'You're just slacking off.' For me, sitting at a desk and thinking about questions with clear answers, or logically organizing my thoughts is easy. However, work is a completely different matter. There's no correct answer for dealing with customers. Even data processing needed for customer analysis can't be done by simply plugging formulas into Excel. Still, I couldn't stand being treated poorly just because I was a Harvard University graduate and top of my class. After leaving the big company, I made a living working part-time instead of as a full-time employee. Even there, when I submitted my resume, people would label me as a Harvard University graduate and assign me tasks that part-timers shouldn't have to do. I was stunned when someone said, "You seem more capable, so please make sure there are no mistakes." As a result, I ended up being blamed for numerous mistakes made by new part-timers I supervised in inventory and ordering. This led me to bounce from one part-time job to another until I settled in my current job. The main reason was that the job listing stated, "Education not required." I was confident in my physical strength and felt that once I learned the job, I could handle it. Besides, at this company, it seemed common to earn qualifications while working, and I liked that raises were based on qualifications and work performance. I submitted my resume with the education section left blank and moved on to the interview. Perhaps because I had no health issues and showed a positive attitude towards studying and earning qualifications while working, I was successfully hired. Though not a company known by everyone, it was a fairly well-known local construction company. When I first joined, I was surprised by the vastly different work environment. But it was refreshing and amusing to be treated as having a low academic background. "Steve, what are your hobbies?" Not having any particular hobbies, I awkwardly answered CEO Williams's question with, "I guess walking." When I joined the company in my 30s, I was laughed at for having a hobby like an old man. So, what did you like to do when you were a kid? Reflecting on my childhood, I didn't remember being passionate about anything in particular. During my school years, I did nothing but study and participate in club activities. I recall looking at American history books or encyclopedias. Williams, deciding that the conversation wasn't going anywhere, changed the subject. Do you like studying? So, which university did you attend? I noticed you didn't mention it on your resume. I didn't expect the conversation to turn to university, so I looked down instinctively. I felt uneasy about lying, but telling the truth had never turned out well for me. There was an awkward pause, but Williams quickly tried to smooth it over. It's not that I care which university you went to. I'm just curious about who you are, Steve. Williams seemed to assume I hadn't attended university and looked somewhat relieved. However, his expression changed to a slightly condescending look as he asked, "What about high school?" Not wanting to reveal my high school name either, I hesitated again. Then, some colleagues chimed in, "Boss, it's not good to push him on things he doesn't want to talk about." Well, we don't have any high school dropouts, but we do have many employees who only finished high school. We don't care about your educational background, so there's no need to feel embarrassed. Williams seemed to have decided I was a high school dropout, and initially this different label felt novel to me. However, contrary to his words about not caring about education, Williams's criticisms of me became more prominent from that day. Even now, over 10 years later, it hasn't changed. "Hey, dropout, since you're not smart, you should work harder physically than the other employees." Having never been called dumb before, I didn't realize at first that this was directed at me. But when my colleagues all looked at me, I knew Williams's remark was aimed at me. "Yes, what should I do? I'll finish up here in a bit." Williams scowled at my response. "What are you talking about? Your tasks come later. The whole operation comes first. That's basic. Even if you can't study, you need to have some teamwork." Being categorized as a high school dropout was amusing at first, but as it turned into character assassination, I became fed up. "Could you stop that? In other companies, you could be legally punished for this." When I retorted, Williams sneered and squinted at me mockingly. "Are you planning to sue for defamation? Despite your incompetence, you immediately think about suing rather than admitting your low ability. There's no such thing as a defamation charge. Maybe you mean libel. Acting all high and mighty, then explain the difference." Having majored in law, this kind of talk is my specialty. It's my bad habit to correct any inaccuracies or mistakes. Even though it was a low-level conversation, I might have enjoyed having an intellectual discussion for the first time in a while. Unconsciously, the words flowed smoothly from my mouth. As I mentioned earlier, while the term defamation exists legally, it would fall under libel, slander, or threats. In this case, what you're doing is most likely slander. It involves publicly insulting someone without stating any facts. Seeing Williams's stunned face, I realized I had made a mistake. I had shown off my knowledge, giving away my background unintentionally. I had intended to live as someone without a university education. But I let my emotions get the better of me and tried to prove my point. Williams's surprised expression turned gradually into a scowl, and finally his face turned red with anger. "With that little bit of knowledge, you're acting all high and mighty. A dropout should just respond loudly and move your body." Realizing it would be pointless to argue further, I decided to stay silent and listen to Williams's lecture. Just then, an employee awkwardly interrupted our conversation. It seemed I had a phone call. "A person named Brown is on the line. What should we do?" the employee asked, and Williams smirked. "Is he a friend of yours? I'd like to see what kind of people hang out with a dropout. Hey, why don't you invite him over?" Ignoring Williams's comment, I responded to the employee. "Thank you. It's probably just a real estate sales call or something. Just tell them I'm out on field work." The employee nodded, took the phone off hold, and relayed the message. "Don't be embarrassed. Well, they say birds of a feather flock together, so he's probably not much better." Williams laughed loudly, satisfied, and walked away. Williams's teasing about being a dropout continued daily, but as long as I responded casually, there were no real issues. I had learned how to brush things off in this company, so I didn't need to worry. However, a period of unease suddenly began for me. Williams became obsessed with a popular TV series about lawyers and prosecutors and started flaunting his knowledge. Perhaps he still held a grudge from the time I outwitted him with my legal knowledge. He began to attack me with convoluted arguments whenever he could. "It's my birthday soon. Got any gift ideas?" Williams said jokingly, and though I hadn't thought about it, I played along. "Right, I'll come up with something you'll like." I gave a temporary answer, but Williams continued triumphantly. "You said it, right? I definitely heard you. Did you know that a verbal agreement is binding, even without a written contract? Just because it's a verbal promise doesn't mean you can take it lightly. I'll be expecting something." Williams looked down on me with a smug expression. Indeed, as Williams said, verbal agreements can be binding. However, the common understanding is that the gift is only considered given on the day it is actually received. This is completely different from a written contract. A verbal gift can be revoked at any time. So, if I decided to revoke it, that would be the end of it. But Williams didn't seem to be aware of that. Although I could have logically explained why Williams was wrong, it was less mentally taxing to just prepare a gift. When I didn't respond, Williams continued with a triumphant look. "It may be an unchangeable fact that you're a high school dropout, but it's never too late to start studying. If you don't study, you'll just be exploited by those in power. Money favors the smart." Williams's mention of exploited reminded me of something. I had lent Williams about $1,500, which he hadn't paid back. I didn't mind him spouting off incorrect trivia, but he needed to be responsible about money. "I believe I lent you $1,500 that hasn't been repaid. Could you return it?" Given the significant amount, I assumed he couldn't simply deny it. However, Williams started saying something outrageous. "Did I borrow that money? Even if I did? Did I say I would return it? If I didn't say that, it's not a contract." I was stunned by his ridiculous argument. "That's not fair. If you keep saying things like that, won't your position be in jeopardy, Williams?" I had no intention of threatening him. I just wanted my money back. However, Williams seemed to think I was trying to threaten and undermine his position. "Are you trying to scare me with such dangerous talk? Well, then it's a lawsuit. But for $1,500, a lawsuit doesn't seem worth it." Williams must have looked this up online. As he said, lawsuits cost money and take time. It would definitely affect our relationship, and I wouldn't be able to continue working at this company. Unable to respond, I watched as Williams laughed loudly and walked away. It is said that to lend it not expecting it to be returned. And I never got that money back. I decided to consider it a valuable lesson and focused on my work. Time flew by, and soon it was the end of the year. Our company held an annual year-end party, paid for by the company, and many employees looked forward to it. I also enjoyed drinking beer and had good relationships with my colleagues, so I was looking forward to that day. Since it was held on the last working day of the year, I headed to the venue in high spirits after finishing my work. Most of the seats were already taken, so I had no trouble finding mine. My seat was near Williams, which was a bit disappointing, but I decided to have a positive attitude and enjoy the party. After the toast, the food and beer kept coming, and more people started getting drunk. Williams, encouraged by the employees around him, was drinking beer and getting quite merry with a red face. I hoped we could continue having a good time, but then Williams, in high spirits, made a condescending remark to me. "Hey, dropout, if you solve this, I'll give you $1 million. Well, you probably can't, but I'll let you dream." Saying this, Williams took out a notebook and started flipping through the pages, as if he had prepared beforehand. The employees around, drunk and egging on, shouted, "It's $1 million. Go for it." Perhaps the alcohol influenced me too. I was determined to solve Williams's problem, thinking there's no way I couldn't. And I wanted to give a perfect answer. Also, remembering the money Williams never returned, I decided to press him. "You're just going to come up with some excuse again, saying there's no paperwork, and I won't get the money even if I get it right, aren't you?" My provocative comments stirred up the atmosphere even more. "There's no proof of that. If only you'd signed some papers, you could have proved it." Williams continued, "Oh, I almost forgot," and pulled out some papers from his bag. It was a grant contract, and it seemed Williams had prepared this exchange as one of the events for the year-end party. Both Williams and I signed the paper while everyone watched. "This makes the contract official. Isn't that guy who keeps calling you recently named Brown? Maybe you can buy the real estate he's trying to sell with this?" Laughing, Williams looked back at his notebook to find the page with the problem. Finally reaching the desired page, he said, "All right," and began to recite a complex statement that made the other employees widen their eyes. I'll skip the finer details, but considering a set of coprime natural numbers A, B, and C that satisfy a plus B equals C. The surrounding employees responded, "That's difficult, and there's no way to understand that." Finally, Williams asked, "What is this conjecture called?" And the employee's attention turned to me. I finished my glass of beer, took a deep breath, and answered, "It's the ABC conjecture, right? Is there anyone who doesn't know that?" I got carried away, but now the employee's attention turned to Williams. Williams, who had been red-faced from drinking, started to turn pale. "Indeed, it's the ABC conjecture," he said, as the employees burst into applause. "Wait, the problem isn't over yet. This is called the ABC conjecture, but write the inequality that describes it here. This is my question." "That's unfair. There's no way he can do it." The employees started to chatter. But within 3 seconds of receiving the open notebook, I had written the inequality that was the answer. Of course, the other employees didn't understand the inequality I had written. Some even asked, "What kind of spell is that?" In the midst of this, only Williams, who knew the answer, looked at me with a pale face. "Did you search it on your smartphone? Cheating isn't allowed." I took out my smartphone from my chest pocket to show I hadn't used it. Williams, shouting, "There's no way someone like you could know that," prompted me to calmly explain. If I remember correctly, it was a big topic in the newspapers a few years ago. A Japanese scholar proved the theory. It left an impression, so I remembered it. "Is that so?" Williams muttered, but quickly shook his head. "So, you don't understand the essence of it. It's odd to remember a newspaper article from years ago. You're a dropout and incompetent. Stop spouting nonsense." I was getting tired of Williams's remarks about my education. Fueled by the beer, I decided I couldn't keep working under someone like him and revealed my background. I've never said I was a dropout. In fact, I graduated top of my class from Harvard University Law Department. There was a moment of silence following my sudden revelation. The employees started murmuring, "He graduated from Harvard University. No wonder he's so quick-witted." Only Williams, in disbelief, directed his question at me. "But you didn't mention any of that on your resume. With such credentials, you could have written it proudly. Don't say things carelessly." I've had a lot of trouble because of being a Harvard University graduate, so I didn't want to make it public. This company stated that academic background didn't matter, and that was the main reason I joined. I briefly explained how much unfair treatment I had endured due to my educational background. One of the employees commented, "Even geniuses have their troubles." From my perspective, the skills needed for school and work are entirely different. And I have much more respect for those who handle their responsibilities well on the job and communicate smoothly with customers. However, it seems society doesn't see it that way. People like me, who happen to graduate from a prestigious university and excel academically, are valued more than those who effectively manage their work. It made me realize how unfair the world can be. Once Williams finally understood that I wasn't lying, his attitude changed completely. "I see, I had no idea." "Well, it looks like you'll be even more valuable to our company. We expect you to perform like the elite you are." Just moments ago, Williams had labeled me a dropout and incompetent, and I couldn't help but laugh. Instead of responding, I held out my hand with a palm up toward Williams. "You mentioned earlier that you'd give me $1 million if I solved the problem. I'm not asking for it right now, but when do you think I can expect it?" The surrounding employees, remembering the promise, began to egg Williams on, saying, "Yeah, that's right. Hey, that was just a joke. It was just a verbal promise." Williams protested. "Didn't you tell me recently that even a verbal promise can be a valid contract? And while verbal promises can be revoked before the transfer, we signed a contract in front of everyone. Honestly, I didn't think the contract written impulsively over drinks would be valid. Especially not for the outrageous amount of $1 million. However, perhaps because Williams had been watching too many legal TV series, he started to panic more than I expected. Suddenly, in front of everyone, he deeply apologized to me. "I'm sorry. Please forget about that contract. I never thought you could solve it. I know this isn't an excuse, but I have a family to take care of. I'll also apologize for all my past disrespect." With tears in his eyes, Williams's apology hung in the air as I let the silence linger longer than necessary. Then, as he slowly lifted his head and met my eyes, I spoke solemnly. "All right, can you return the $1,500 I lent you earlier? We'll call it even. I don't intend to make a contract, but it's not necessary, right?" Williams, in a rush, said, "I'll go withdraw it right away," and left, leaving the rest of the employees laughing. When the new year began and we returned to work, Williams called me to his office. Usually, he would summon me in a rough manner. But now, perhaps because of the year-end party incident, he treated me with great respect. It wasn't unpleasant, but I felt a bit uncomfortable, sensing that the other employees now saw me as the elite from Harvard University. Being treated as a close colleague as before was much easier than being respected for my academic background. Williams began, "To utilize your Harvard University degree, we're considering assigning you different tasks. Of course, we'll increase your salary. Would you take it?" Listening to Williams's detailed explanation, I realized he intended to assign me tasks related to tax and legal matters. The salary increase was low for the additional responsibilities. More importantly, I had other thoughts, so I shook my head before he finished speaking. "What's wrong? What are you dissatisfied with? I have high expectations for you. Did you give my contact information to a man named Brown?" Williams seemed to recall, looking apologetic as he explained. "He was so eager to know about you that I gave him your contact info at the end of the year. You shouldn't do that without permission. Well, it worked out this time since it led to a new job opportunity." The term "new job" caught Williams's attention, and he asked for more details. "Brown was my classmate in university, and we used to run an online business together. He asked me to help with his current company, so I'm planning to work there starting in April. Sorry to inform you this way." As I apologized, Williams desperately tried to persuade me to stay. I explained honestly that I found it difficult to work at the current company, was attracted to the opportunity at Brown's company. The new company was involved in leasing and architecture businesses. I will be involved in developing software that designs houses and buildings in 3D and connects them to virtual tours of rental properties. Hearing that it's a company in the same industry and region, Williams's face turned even paler. "Can you really do that? I'll drastically improve your conditions, so please do that at our company." "No, I've already made my decision, thank you." There was nothing more to say to Williams. I turned my back on him and got to work. As planned, I started working at Brown's company in the new fiscal year. Although it's a startup with a short history, it has a diverse range of people, from school dropouts to those with graduate degrees. None of them felt inferior about their past, nor did they excessively flaunt their educational backgrounds. I found this environment very comfortable. While Brown's company was challenging new things and riding the wave of the times, Williams's company couldn't change its old ways and was gradually declining. I'm sure that in the not-too-distant future, the sales of the two companies will be reversed. A company where the president judges people by their educational background and insults employees without hesitation is bound to fail. If the corporate culture doesn't change, it's only natural for it to be eliminated. I continued to immerse myself in my work, dedicated to contributing to my current company. A few years later, as expected, Williams's company declined while Brown's startup grew enough to go public. From what I've heard, Williams's company is struggling financially and can't repay its bank loans. There are even suggestions that Williams should step down as president, and it's only a matter of time before he does. I hope the new president will reform and rebuild the company. Becoming a publicly traded company is not easy, but Brown and the employees haven't shown any arrogance. Just as some people look down on others based on their educational background, I worried that some might start to boast about being part of a public company, but that hasn't been the case. People shouldn't be judged by the university they attended or the company they work for. They should be evaluated based on their beliefs and what they have accomplished. With that in mind, I want to continue working at this company in a way that I can be proud of myself